Do you remember the days when HSR was considered a good game? Do you remember the Genshin could never memes? Those were the good times. Yet they didn't last long. That's why we shouldn't trust a company that messed up one game not to mess up another one. HSR 2.2 stream gave me this nasty feeling, like I was given a piece of candy in a shiny wrapper, but when I opened it, there was a piece of shit inside. They announced some good things, sure, but not in good faith. All they did was damage control for the purpose of distracting people from predatory practices. Sure, a free 5-star is good, Genshin would never, and I don't mind having Ruan Mace E1. Now my break team will last a little longer, maybe it will be playable for one more patch. Loche is just a convenient healing bot. In comparison to other limited healers, he is just bad. But he is still kinda serviceable in some situations. He's by no means good though. He's been utterly power crept, so I wonder why they're giving him away, huh? And this will be the last time you claim anything from this character store, unless you are a whale or you are unlucky enough to lose 50-50 to the same character repeatedly, because you get this currency from getting copies of E6 5-star characters. How many people have these? This is literally just quality of life for whales. Sure, you can now lose your 50-50 to Blade, Zele or Fushuan. You know, the 3 units that have become irrelevant a long time ago. Fushuan can't be played as solo sustain anymore, especially with how much damage these new enemies deal. And you could always use a spare slot for a broken harmony unit instead of another sustain. Blade does no damage. Zele can't use her resurgence mechanic because of how thick the enemies are, and her multipliers are pretty low for current standards too. And you still have to choose a pool of 7 characters. 7! You might choose Blade and Fushuan and Zele, but keep losing to Himeko or Velt. It's not guaranteed that you'll get them and losing 50-50. Your chances of getting the old standard units are still higher. Sure, they announced buffs for some Year 1 characters in 2 versions from now. At least they set a deadline, I guess. We don't know how good these buffs are going to be though. But they didn't do anything to solve the main issue, which is the sheer speed of power creep in this damn game, and the fact that they keep releasing absurdly broken characters that negate some mechanics that could be used in an interesting way instead. In short, it seems like they are trying to placate the players with solving or promising to solve some issues while pushing more predatory practices on us. This is why I'm going to talk about the signs that whoever's aren't willing to fundamentally change their approach to the game, and why we shouldn't have high hopes for the future of HSR. So the first and the most important reason why I don't believe whoever's is that they don't make the small and easy to implement steps to address the main player concerns. And the main concern that players have been voicing recently is the increase in predatory practices, like power creep and locking parts of character kit behind eidolons and like cons. These concerns have been there since the second half of Penacony, and the power creep discourse really blew up around 3.0. Who know about it, and they could address it quickly by rebalancing their newer units and adding the things that should be in their kit into their damn kit. Yet we get Tribi, a character that has a very important mechanic that adds quite a bit of value to her, locked behind her E1. What evil cosmic force stopped them from adding it to her base kit, and maybe adding some true damage increase to E1? It's greed, plain and simple. Tribi's kit is an issue that could be easily changed in beta if they wanted to restore some player goodwill. And they also doubled down by baking a big issue into Miday's kit, his automatic attack that you cannot control. And this issue can be conveniently solved by his E1. The classic case of creating a problem and selling the solution. The same thing is happening with Castris and her dreaded global passive. It really would be easier to remove it in beta than to have it in game, because not adding a new mechanic is usually easier than adding it and dealing with possible bugs it causes, you know. And let me remind you, when whoever's truly feel the pressure, they can implement global changes efficiently, quickly, which happened in ZZZ. Their revenue dropped off a cliff in 1.1, and by 1.4 they made huge global changes to the game and addressed all the main player concerns. Yet they can't change a few multipliers in HSR, huh? And this global passive situation brings me to the second reason I'm skeptical about the future of HSR. Even after the backlash, whoever's are willing to push the boundaries when it comes to implementing new predatory mechanics. They are stubborn and they will keep pushing. I've seen quite a few people who don't understand what is so bad about this global passive. Oh no, they are hating my poor cutie Castris for no reason. These players are so mean. After all, the passive is pretty minor, it just resurrects your character with low HP and it's pretty useless most of the time. To which I'll say, it doesn't matter whether this passive is good or not. What matters is that it exists at all, because it shouldn't. because with this one, Hoyo are testing the waters, pushing the boundaries to see how much bullshit their players are willing to accept. Besides, as situational as it might be, it is still an account-wide permanent effect that will definitely save you in a few runs going forward. There are many cases when preventing a one-shot can save your whole team and let you clear a run. So if you get Castoris, you will have this chance forever, and if you don't, you suck ass. And the effect will add up with time. It literally becomes more valuable the longer you have it on your account. If Castoris sells well, and she'll probably sell well, she's one of the most popular characters among Furious, we can expect more of these account-wide passes. And I can guarantee you some of them will be much more useful than this resurrection buff. Because what stops them from adding characters that buff crit rate, crit damage or attack? What stops them from adding characters that give you speed, break effect, or resistance shred, or damage resist, or additional healing, or turn advance as a global passive? What stops them from adding characters that permanently increase your relic drops or character material drops? Nothing. If they think they can get away with it, they will do it. And Castoris is here to test it. Otherwise, why would they be so insistent on keeping this useless passive in game when so many players are complaining about it? It would be easier to just take it away. They just want to test the mechanics of how such buffs would work and player acceptance of this feature to double down on it further down the line. That's it. They want to press you into accepting features they want that will only benefit them without enhancing your player experience. And I didn't even mention that even aside from the passive, Castoris is still pretty OP. And she is a DPS with strong support capabilities like resistance shred and shielding, which is kind of pushing the boundaries too, because they will have to make the next DPS even more OP to power creep her. And they will have to give this hypothetical future character even more support capabilities. They are breaking the boundaries of character roles now, and they are breaking them hard. A character like Castoris should not exist. They are trying to pull an Acheron again, releasing a character that looks similar to a Honkai Impact 3rd character, and has a cool backstory and important role in the main quest, and cool animations. And they try to use this character to push the boundaries of power creep. And I think the strategy of selling power creep through Honkai Impact 3rd characters will reach its peak with Phaenon and that certain pink-hair girl that totally doesn't look like Alicia. Because Phaenon is basically a copy of Kevin from Honkai Impact 3rd, the most beloved male character in that game that has no chance of ever becoming playable there. So people will be willing to pull for him in this game, because come on, it's a playable Kevin. Who can skip a playable Kevin? And Castoris' fellow Crisis there, running in the same version, is also pretty broken. He basically deletes one of the core game mechanics, elemental weakness, and this is what I want to talk about next. However, have already broken the game so much that they can't stop breaking it further. Bypassing the core game mechanics and restrictions has literally been the main selling point for so many new characters for quite a while. Oh, look at this new unit, they can bypass the boundaries of their path and role, they do decent damage as a healer, or have good support capabilities as a main DPS. And this character is an Ahility main DPS nuker instead of a debuff or a DOT unit. This character can bypass the turn mechanic and make you go instantly, and also give you a lot of buffs on top. Look, this shiny new unit ignores elemental weakness or implants their own weakness on the enemy. And this amazing new character can buff not just your team, but your whole account. Isn't it amazing? Don't you want to buy them all? And these OP characters seem fun and powerful at first, until you realize that they destroy some of the mechanics that could serve as a source of strategic play. A new unit that doesn't have one or several of these game-breaking mechanics would feel underwhelming in comparison. So Horrors will keep doubling down. This just escalates over time. First we had Silverwolf, with her random party member's weakness type implant. Then multiple DPS that can implant their own elemental weakness. Then we have an Axa that just deletes this mechanic if he's on your team. I bet some character further down the line will have an account-wide weakness bypass buff. Just trust me. A year from now, 2 years from now, this character will be here. The Herta had one weakness. She had no weakness implant in her kit. But all hail the great Hoyo, for she is going to get a support that solves the problem. And this support, by sheer coincidence, works best with the Radition characters. I wonder which DPS he is meant for. Horrors can't go back on this. And this makes power creep worse by design. Because the more OP and more universal the characters get, the wider their potential for power creep becomes. If before we could expect that a character could only be power creeped by another character in the same niche, the one with the same path and element and role, now the boundaries have become pretty vague. So almost every new DPS just straight up power creeps most of the old ones. And sometimes even characters of different roles, like supports. So Hoovers have broken the game to the point they can't really do anything about it. And they aren't willing to take any steps in this direction anyway. But Hoovers have acknowledged the problem. In their dev notes and their streams, they're gonna buff the old units. They're gonna change the story. They're doing such a great job. They're such an amazing company. Yeah, sure, they acknowledge the problems with Genshin, the survey too. Did they do anything about it? Hoovers know all the problems with their games, but they have always been good at dodging the actual meaningful improvement by making small changes that seem kinda good on the surface but are inconsequential in the long run. Look at Genshin. The artifact loadouts are still not in-game. Yeah, they added a bunch of useless, annoying artifact sorting features nobody asked for. There is no resin overflow, but they increased resin cap to 200, thank you, Hoovers. I'm gonna pull 10 copies of Oresa to thank you for this, and to hopefully get smothered by her thick butt cheeks, so I don't have to watch how you keep destroying your games. So when it comes to HSR, the same is going to happen. They will acknowledge the problems, to hush the criticism, and make an illusion that they care. And then they either do nothing or make some small changes that don't actually solve the issue. They did it with the story, kind of. They let you skip some longer lore yapping bits, and they deleted some puzzles and altered the maps, which is good, but they don't add an actual skip button for people who don't care at all. Not even in events that are inconsequential for the main narrative, and often have pretty dumb stories. And don't forget that it took them 2 years to acknowledge that white text on black screen is not a pinnacle of storytelling. And maybe character models with 3 basic poses aren't interesting to look at in dialogue. I wonder how long it will take them to actually add dynamic poses and camera angles. Yes, they supposedly fixed the story in 3.2, but it still seems to be full of yapping with static character models again. I don't think they will fix their fundamental problems in storytelling so quickly. So let's return to the topic of character buffs. Hoovers mentioned buffing the old units after lots of complaints starting from latter half of Penacony pretty much, and they pushed back the changes all the way to 3.4. And it doesn't mean that these buffs will not be disappointing. Will they actually significantly buff the older units? Will they at least bring them to the level of break meta? I doubt. Doing this goes against their interest, because buffing old units brings them no direct profits. So why would they buff them in any significant way for free? To enhance your player experience and let you have fun? This is not their purpose. I would love to be wrong, of course. But pardon me, I'm being negative towards the best company in the world. All hail the great horror, they are going to buff my wife Jin Liu, and also Blady and Mommy Kafka and Silverwolf. Yay, they are gonna be so meta. I'm gonna have so much fun playing them for a couple of patches before they become obsolete. I'll tell you what these buffs are probably going to look like. They will either be small increases in multipliers or small changes in the kit, like applying one more debuff or having a little bit more uptime. But these buffs will in no way make these characters competitive, and with the current speed of power creep, any buff is meaningless anyway, because all characters will quickly become obsolete again. And don't forget that Blade is now a unit that you can get from losing 50-50. There is no way they will make him actually good. Besides, E6 Blade is considerably weaker than E0 Herter or E0 Castoris. The buffs would have to be insane to bring him back, and I hope they won't monetize these buffs, because they could. And even if they implement the buffs, and these buffs are good, it doesn't mean that they will commit to buffing more older units in the future. It literally might be a one-off thing that goes nowhere and just serves to calm down the players, as Hoovers shove a generous dose of power creep in their faces. We have to see long-term commitment to the game improvement. Without it, these changes are meaningless. And of course there will be buffs, in the form of limited 5-star supports as usual. Yet these supports will be more efficient with new units anyway, since these units actually have better multipliers and more broken kits. We call these support releases buffs because they make the old characters more usable, but the old DPS literally play the least important role in those teams. They are just a vessel for buffs, not a unit that makes a tangible contribution to the team performance. So is this a buff really? I don't think so. It's just an OP new unit that happens to work with some older ones. Hoovers have chosen the easiest and the lamest way to market new characters. Just give them higher multipliers, more game-breaking mechanics, and more utility in different roles. Instead of using the existing game mechanics in a fun way, or giving the characters interesting and unique kits, they just lean into the power creep. This approach is very unhealthy for the game, and the longer it continues, the worse these problems will become. I've seen some people saying that HSR is turning into Honkai Impact 3rd when it comes to power creep, but I think it is far beyond this point. It feels worse than Honkai Impact 3rd, at least at the time when I was actively playing. I don't know what's happening there now, but back then, at least they released one S-rank, aka 5-star, character per patch, and had some patches with only 4-star units releasing. And these 4-star units were farmable. Granted, you had to pull for all the gear on the banner, otherwise your character would be kinda dogshit. But it was still easier to obtain than light cones in HSR, with their damn 75 to 25. I built at least 2 fully geared teams, and also a couple of partially geared ones, in like a year or so. Besides, support units tended to last for quite a while in Honkai Impact 3rd. Hersher of Sentience was a go-to physical support from her release up to Hersher of Rebirth release. For 2 years. Hell, in Honkai Impact 3rd they even gave Hersher of Origin for free on release with free gear, which made building the triple Hersher team a little bit easier. Imagine if you got free Aventurine to complete your full 5-star fart team. Honkai Impact 3rd was still predatory in many ways, don't get me wrong. I'm not praising this game for being the best gacha ever, but as someone who played both, HSR at the moment feels worse in terms of power creep than Honkai Impact 3rd felt back then, like a year and a half, 2 years ago. This is why, right now, it's the best time to drop HSR if you feel exhausted and unsatisfied by the game. With the course the devs have taken, these problems will only get worse. If they have no reason to change, they won't change, but maybe, if they see the player count and revenue drop, they will think about actually working on the issues. Maybe. All in all, I just don't believe however's are going to tone down their predatory practices in HSR. At least not anytime soon. And it's a shame because HSR had potential in the beginning. I love the space fantasy vibe of this game, but as of now, player experience has been getting worse and worse. And if we as players accept this bullshit, they will come up with newer and newer ways to milk us. You shouldn't let it slide. Defending gacha games is just going to make them worse. It's literally counterproductive. I want them to improve the game, I really do. This is why I'm even talking about it. But at the same time, I don't have much hope. Because there are enough players who will enable hoivers and will excuse their predatory practices. I don't even want to imagine what kinds of broken kits Hoi will be pumping out a year or 2 from now. I couldn't imagine Castoris a year ago. So the state of the game is actually pretty sad. That's all I wanted to say. Take care, spend responsibly, and see you in the next video. Bye!